Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hello everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 513 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And today, dear people, I'm very happy to be sharing an interview. I've been trying to get done for quite some time. Been going back and forth. We finally made it happen. Welcoming to the show today, Australian guitarist, singer-songwriter, and hired gun member of UMI, Mr. Davey Lane. And today, Davey and I are going to talk all about his new album. He's going to share this remarkable story about how he started as a teenager transcribing UMI songs only to join the band when he was just 18 years old, still in high school. Can you imagine joining your favorite band while still in high school? Well, Davey did, and he tells that story today. We also talk about his new album, Finally a Party Record. We talk about him meeting Paul McCartney backstage. We explore his fascinating experimental vinyl projects, including collaborations with Stu McKenzie of King Gizzard and an unreleased album or two from the Saints. We talk all about that today. It's a very fun conversation with Davey. And again, check out his new LP, Finally a Party Record. It's available now on all streaming platforms. And of course, vinyl is available at Cheer Squad Records. That's Cheer Squad Records, tapes.bandcamp.com. There's a limited edition, beautiful red and yellow split LP, as well as the standard black. But man, that red and yellow split is pretty rad. Of course, you can follow Davey on Instagram at Davey Hello Lane. And he's got some gigs coming up. And maybe we'll see you at one soon. Also, please note we have an extended version of this podcast available at patreon.com/vinylguide. More time with Davey, more fun discussions, more shooting the shit, and more music stories. Plus, it's in high resolution. And if you become a Patreon member, you get the warm, fuzzy feeling in your belly and below that you're helping support this podcast. And we certainly appreciate it. That's patreon.com/vinylguide. Alrighty, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get on the horn with Mr. Davey Lane. Talk all about vinyl, his new album, UMI, and more.
Hey, Nate.
Mr. Davey Lane, how are you, man?
Good, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad we were able to connect this up. I do want to talk about the new record, Finally a Party Record.
Yep.
I'm interested to hear the background as to why this was the title selected.
Well, it's obviously, there's a healthy sprinkle of irony in the title there. I mean, it was just kind of when I got to the end of the record. Actually, kind of the title came along while we were recording, and when it kind of dawned on me that the subject matter of most of the songs were, hit on pretty deep / kind of morose / kind of depressing stuff. That's the thing. I've always lyrically, I've always been inspired to write when things are shit. The initial title I had was The Great Unraveling, but I kind of thought that might be a little bit. Me and a lot of my friends, we thrive on dark, dry humor, but you have to remember that the general populace sometimes isn't going to get your stupid jokes, even though the title that I landed on is a joke anyway. But
it's a lot more chipper than "Don't Bank Your Heart on It." I mean, listen to those albums.
Right.
I would perceive your mood has certainly lifted in the last few years.
Oh, definitely. Well, definitely. Like with the marching of time, one would like to think you accrue some kind of, a little bit more wisdom and a sense of your place in the world, and part of this record is talking about that, finding peace with why your brain is the way it is, and your place in the world, but yeah, that's the thing. It's just like there's always got to, as much as I'm inspired by, a lot of, and it's usually, romantic situations gone catastrophically wrong. It's you've got to, there's always a little glimmer of optimism in there.
Sure, there's peaks and valleys, and you never know kind of when
Yeah.
you're going to be able to catch one. Occasionally, there's going to be a darker album that comes out.
I mean, that's the thing. It's just like whenever I put a record out, I have realistic expectations, but making music is a compulsion of mine that I can't really control. And my aims for putting records out, I don't have really careeristic kind of intentions. It's more just like, here are my thoughts spewed onto a plastic platter, and if someone gets something out of them, that's great. So yeah,
Yeah, you got to be okay with the grind. And
that's it.
if the stars align, then maybe people will talk about you posthumously, but
Yeah,
you can't be
well,
attached to that.
well, exactly. I always, like, I always think of Big Star or Emmett Rhodes, and a lot of
Hmm.
people like that who I guess Nick Drake, you could throw him into. I'm not comparing myself to these artists at all
Right.
by any stretch, but it's like, well,
Sid Barrett.
Well, yeah, exactly, Sid Barrett, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, like, who appreciated later on, and maybe like, and that's the thing. Whenever I put records out, I'm always pretty philosophical. If things aren't, like, don't really catch on, it's just like, well, like, fuck, maybe someone will find this record apropos of nothing in a record bin sometime and get something out of it, and
Yeah.
that's why you do it.
I think in your case, a lot of people have, certainly a lot of very important key people, creatives are very aware of you. And you get a lot of phone calls when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to touring, that sort of thing. So that's
Well,
a,
yeah, absolutely. Well, over the years, I've been very lucky to work with legitimate musical heroes of mine. So, and that's all, and it's just, um, I'd like
you're
to think
you're the Forrest Gump of Australian guitar, I think. That's
thank, that's, I'll, I'll gladly hang my hat on that.
so you've got a, again, tremendous resume. I definitely want to go through all this, but first off, I got to ask you, record collector. Are you a bit of a record nerd, Davey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my guess. I've kind of collected over the years. I mean, I have to say there are friends of mine who are a lot more dedicated to their record collecting than I am. But I mean, I've got a few cool little things, like nothing too over the top. But I've got a few hundred records, and yeah, I mean, mostly kind of, if you hear my music, it's mostly in the kind of little power pop kind of new wave, little bit of punk, bit of prog, nothing too extensive. And Rusty, who plays drums in UMI, he's a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of music anyway, and has a pretty impressive record collection when it comes to. He's into a lot of like freak beat and kind of stuff
Mhm.
like that. So I'm lucky enough to get some of his doubles when he's but
Well, there's always going to be people who are going to, especially record collecting. There are people that just have these insane collections. But, comparisons aside, do you spend much time? Do you look forward to going to record stores? Right now, you're in Tweed Heads on a day
yeah,
off or something like that. Where's the record shop? Is
yeah.
that kind of what you do?
I walked past one yesterday that was shut. But yeah, like, wherever I am, even if I've been to somewhere that I haven't been before, I'll always do a preemptive Google to see if there's anything around. And yeah, like, yesterday was a day off in Brisbane. I wandered into Rocking Horse and picked up a couple of little things, like nothing special. But and that's the thing. I never really go into a record shop with any. I kind of have my go-to sections if there's gaps that I need to fill in somewhere. But more often than not, it's just kind of aimless, kind of. And I do have a pretty short attention span too, so I don't really. I can't do the. I've got friends who are very dedicated and are happy to do like the 5 hour dig, but I'm up zipping and zapping, so half
So,
an hour and I'm done.
so you don't walk in with a list or anything. You just kind of feel the place out. You let something find you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of times I've come across stuff that just because it's playing in the record shop. Like Comets on Fire were a band that I discovered, like a fucking incredible band. Like, what was the record? I think it was a Blue Cathedral, maybe.
They've got a few of them. Ethan is in Ethan from oh Jesus, Howlin' Rain.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
He's in Comets on Fire. He's the
Right.
front. Yeah, yeah. So there's that. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
There you go. Well, I think I can't remember which record it was. I think it might have been the Cathedral one, but I stumbled upon that on and how's this for dichotomy? I was on tour with Crowded House, and I wandered into a record shop and heard this Comets on Fire record, and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, ticks every box of, it does have that proggy. They do have that proggy thing to it, and then it's just like just fucking unhinged chaos. But and then a few months ago, I was in a record shop in Canberra, and they were playing. I can't remember the name of the record, but this prog band Nectar. Do you know Nectar?
I think I've seen the album. I can't say that I've heard it though.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the name of the record, but I bought it. The English guys who I think maybe they might have been either in the Air Force or the Army, and they were based in Germany and played around Europe. It's kind of like, yeah, a bit more of a exploratory, like to go, yeah, exploratory big. It's very big star in places, but
Mm.
like, just with some extra weird time signatures and whatnot. But yeah, like I mean that's where I get the real dopamine hit in a record store is just chancing on something that I've never heard before, and
Yeah,
yeah.
those are always fun to take home because you're like, okay, I'm. This is going to open a whole new world.
Hey, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you create music yourself, you're always looking for new avenues to mine. So
Hmm.
so
It's is
yeah.
vinyl important to you? Is it like you put out your music on vinyl, but is that kind of your primary way of
Oh,
listening and absorbing?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I don't have an amazing setup, but there's just something about, and like we were talking before about how easily distracted I am. It's for me, it's a real meditative thing for me to put on a record and just kind of bask in it for that amount of 18 to 20 minutes aside or whatever, and not be distracted by anything else.
Mm.
It's and that kind of that for me is a pretty important anchor, like to
Mhm.
keep me keep me level.
So when you're creating an album, like finally a party record or any of your other solo albums, do you think in like act one, act two, like this could be something for side one or what? Or do you do the sequencing at the very end once you've done all the recording?
No, it's funny. The last two records have very much been almost at the demo stage, have kind of found their spot in the sequence. Like we were talking before about troughs and valleys and ebbs and flows. It's like finding the right, yeah, like sequencing is a record is it's actually one of my favorite parts, really. And I've always been. I've always loved doing, not that there's any segues or crossfade stuff going on this record, but I've always really loved just getting in and seeing how you can match that chord at the end of that song and crossfade that. Actually, there is a crossfade like that on this record from the opening instrumental into the first like proper song. There's when we recorded the song, ended the song on a minor chord instead of a major chord, knowing that that was going to be the first chord of the next song. So there is thought gone into it, into that far back that okay, well, this is probably going to segue into that. So
Yeah, it
um,
starts off with an instrumental. I think I think
mm,
that transition it reminded me of kind of funeral for a friend
yeah,
into
oh,
love lies
that,
bleeding kind of
that
thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That parallel has been drawn by myself on, yeah, but I don't know. Like I thought the instrumental was just 2 minutes of oddball, and I was kind of talking to my friend Rob, who co-produced the record with me, and he's like, "Oh, do you think people are going to be a bit weirded out by by having this strange instrumental?" It's like, well, I mean, if people are already at the point where they've bought a record and they're putting it on the turntable, you'd think they're kind of like that they're up for going on the trip, you know? So
Yeah, okay. When you look at your mentors, your musical mentors, who would it be? Who's on that list?
people I've worked with,
Oh
or
no,
just
no, people you've looked up to, even from as your youth. Put
yeah,
it this way:
right,
the musicians that shaped your brain and your tastes the
yeah,
most.
okay, right. Well, I mean, I guess it's hard to avoid the Beatles really because that was kind of the stepping stone. I remember very early on after getting into the Beatles and hearing Pepper and then getting the Beatles recording sessions book, and that sparked off an interest in recording and production. And because even hearing Pepper at I would have been pretty young then, like 7 or 8, but and it would have been probably another 9 or 10 years before I would take any hallucinogenic drugs. But there was something in that record that I was like, why does this sound like a kaleidoscope? And it's just like that thing of that how they harness vari speed and artificial double tracking and flanging and all that stuff. And I just became fascinated with it. So, obviously the Beatles were a springboard, but I guess for me, it's like artists that were a kind of one-stop kind of production, musician, singer, songwriter, engineer, kind of, you know, like your Emmett Rhodes or your Jeff Lynnes or your,
Oh,
Nick Lowe or Todd Rundgren, obviously. So, yeah, I think for me, it's just yeah, like, and that's what they have kind of yeah, it's artists like that have kind of like shaped what I kind of aim for myself, I guess.
have you ever spent a moment? Have you ever had a moment with any of the Beatles?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
Yeah, I met Paul McCartney in 2017 when he toured out here. Met him in Melbourne. It was the most surreal 2 minutes of my life. Goes without saying, but
How do you get near Paul McCartney?
well, I was recording with Jimmy Barnes at the time, and he obviously knew how much of a fan I was, and obviously he was very close with Michael Gudinski, who's passed away now, but Jimmy very kindly organized it with Michael he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you to meet Paul McCartney. I'll sort it out. Get Michael to sort it out." And so he kind of hooked it up through Michael, and it was like, fuck, like which I was insanely grateful for. But yeah, so I remember Michael coming and getting me side of stage and going down to the bowels of the Amy Park, which was the venue in Melbourne, the soccer field there. And I dropped a Valium about half an hour earlier because so I don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to I'm prone to anxiety at the best of times, but I don't want to lose my powers of speech or start crying or
Those are
not be
definite possibilities at the bar.
yeah, of course. Either one could have very, very easily happened. And we're walking down through the bowels of this park through all these kind of brick corridors, and Michael saying to me, he's like, "Look, mate, just don't go fucking gaga, all right? Just keep you cool, and it'll be." I was like, "Yeah, no, it's all right. I think I've got this. I think it's fine." I just remember being in this little holding area for 5 minutes or so and just trying to distract myself with the patterns of the bricks and just anything to distract myself from the fact that I was going to meet fucking Paul McCartney in a couple of minutes. And just hearing, like somebody it was like, "Oh, here he comes," and then just looking from just across the hallway, and the door opens and out he fucking walks. And my memory was like I imagine it to be like, one of those prom films where the guy's standing at the bottom of the stairs watching his date slowly descend the stairwell. And it felt like it took, it was probably only like fucking 6 or 7 meters away, but it felt like it took ages. And anyway, we got to the point where we're kind of almost standing face to face, and it's just like, holy fuck, it's fucking Paul McCartney. And it's just that, I'm sure you've met you've met heroes in the past yourself, and sometimes it feels like, because it's somebody whose visage has been familiar to you for so long, you kind of almost start to feel dizzied and start to
It's
question
dreamy.
it.
It's like a dream state kind of.
Exactly, absolutely. And he's fucking standing there. It's Paul McCartney, but it's like, oh, it's Paul McCartney, but like it looks kind of. I can see every line on his face. He looks older than he does in the. And he kind of had a little bit of stage makeup on, and anyway, Michael goes, Davey, this is Paul, and I was like, yeah, no shit. And it's like, Paul, this is Davey, and Paul, because it obviously been organised through Michael. Paul puts his hands out and he goes, hey, yeah, I've heard all about you, and I was like, oh. It's like, what do I fucking say? What do I say? And so it's like, well, whatever you heard about me, it's all lies. And then he's like, just scratched his nose like he does, and he goes, no, but this is the thing. All I've heard about you is bad stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I'm experiencing the Scouser wit in person. It was only like it wouldn't have been more than 2 minutes, and we talked you know, for all the thousands of questions that you could have, I wasn't gonna ask any of them. I wasn't gonna say your music means so much to me. And it's just like, well, no shit, of course it does. And I just said, hey, I really like your jacket. And he was like, oh, and his eyes lit up, and he was like, oh, yeah, it's a great jacket. Like, and took it off, and he was showing me the lining. And it's like, look at the lining. Lining's great. Yeah. And I was just like, where did you get this jacket done? And he was like, and he was looking for the label, and he couldn't remember the name. And he was like, yeah, this is Taylor in Beverly Hills. I was like, yeah, you know what? If ever you want a really good jacket, you go with this guy. And I'm like, okay, cool, thanks. I'll store that for when I've got 20 grand in the bank for a nice jacket. And he was going, yeah, I've got a few of them. And yeah, and don't think I asked anything musical. It was, yeah, I did say, you played Temporary Secretary off McCartney too in soundcheck yesterday, and he was like, oh, do you like that one? Do you? I was like, yeah, I love it. And he goes, oh, I should have put it in the set for tonight then. And I was like, oh, well, surely it's not too late. Like,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
let everyone. You got to mix up your set list.
I guarantee you, Paul, if you say you want to play it, the band will follow.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, he's like, yeah, no, it's too late. They've already printed out the set lists. But and then it was just a little bit of small talk. Him and Michael were talking about stuff, and it was just like, okay, well, I've had my fill here. Like, before somebody tells me to fuck off, I'm just gonna say, hey, Paul, thank you so much. Really great. Lovely to meet you. And he's like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you. And it's just like, and I said, have a great show tonight. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I think I will. I was just like, turned around and walked off, and it's like, okay, I can't ask for any more than that,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that experience. Left on a good note, didn't punish him,
Didn't make an ass of yourself.
didn't make a prick of myself. So thank you, Diazepam.
That's the secret. You had your list of questions. Okay, I'm going to start with the tailoring. Then I'm going to go to the deep cut. Then I'm
Yeah,
going to.
exactly. Tailoring, deep cut, small talk.
I think
Fuck.
I think the most important person I've ever spent a moment with. I had a moment with Tim Cook of Apple.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and
Wow.
it was just like 30 seconds. And the only thing
What
going
were the circumstances of that?
Oh, I was visiting a friend of mine at Apple, and
Okay.
Tim was
Yeah.
right there. And there's
Yeah.
there's this little area, it's kind of holding area that all the executives kind of everything passed through, and there was Tim, and he just kind of hung out for a little bit and talked. And the
Yeah.
only thing the thing that went through my mind is like, if I punch him, I could take like 5 billion off the stock market right now. Like
I love your sense of nihilism. That's great.
I'd still be in a jail in
Well,
California.
there'd be that.
There is
Yeah.
a downside.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So you get your early Beatles in.
Yeah.
You start playing guitar. You
Yeah.
and you start, as I understand, transcribing UMI songs.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that was kind of your gateway into actually becoming part of the band at
Mm.
age 18, I want to say.
18. Yeah, 18. I was a
Jesus.
couple of months out of school. Yeah, I was doing guitar tabs on and it was probably I was maybe like 14 or 15 or so, and I was first starting to take guitar seriously. I've been kind of playing around for a few years and just, didn't not having gotten any further than House of the Rising Sun and Smoke on the Water, and
Hmm.
wanting to seriously learn well, more than anything, learn chords and learn tunings, and as more as a vehicle for writing than learning to be a a good guitar player. It
You're
was
trying to
just,
find the science in it or something. Is that
yeah,
what yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing that always fascinated me about music. It was just like chord changes and how, um, what kind of, it's like, what is it about this chord change or this like really jarring bit here that triggers that gives me this real, I can almost feel it physically, that the impact of blah 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 blah. I'm articulating this very badly, but and UMI were one of the bands growing up when I was around that formative age, and having grown up being obsessed with music from the 60s and 70s, like, and the Who were a massive one for me growing up. And I guess Pete Townsend is probably the reason I wanted to start seriously playing guitar. But seeing UMI play, and obviously listening to Triple J at the time, like discovering the meanies and the hard-ons and Snout, and all these really vital music that was happening in the here and now, because I don't know what the fuck I was there, but I guess I was just a kid, but I was just like, well, I guess great music was a thing that happened in the 60s and it's not really around anymore. Like, and I wasn't at that age where I could and it was that formative age where you start discovering what's happening or what's happening
Mhm.
around you, and like, yeah, and UMI were one of those bands that I really just fell in love with, and um,
And just for kind of international listeners, UMI
mm,
is a very Australian thing, and I moved to Australia early 2000s, so I kind of
yeah,
missed the initial kind of UMI craze, but they were
sure,
huge. They were a huge band in Australia, and they were kind of all over the place. They were local heroes. Here you are transcribing, and
yeah.
then okay, so how does
That's
that transition happen for you?
Well, yeah. Well, I think because my friend of mine and it was back in the days of, there was bands. Every band had a bunch of fan sites and
Okay,
whatnot, and I was writing them and sending them to this fella Danny Howe, who lives in Sydney and also now has a great podcast of his own. Yeah, it was just through that. And I think it was via that I started communicating with Rusty, the drummer from UMI. And I'd send him a couple of tabs, and he'd write back to me. He goes, "Oh, I showed Tim, and like he's really impressed, and he's kind of annoyed you cracked his code for this song for, but I just love, yeah, I just love
you love
that.
annoying Tim, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, 26 years and running. But yeah, and then it was basically through that UMI playing an all ages show in Melbourne because I think I was still like 16 at the time, and I got up and played guitar with them on a song, and I don't know what it was. I mean, I barely remember it because I was so terrified, but
So hang on, you're 16. You're 16, and then you get word that this band that I'm sure all of your high school cohort were aware of, keenly
yeah.
aware of, has said, you know what? We're going to get Davey to play a song.
Yeah, and the circumstances around it, like still, yeah, like still. I mean, the circumstances around me joining the band, even to this day, I'm like, that just seems so fucking insane for this, an established band to take a, you know, take a risk by taking on this nerdy kid who, like had never, I'd never played guitar professionally on a stage before as well. So it's just like, fuck, they really took a risk on. I mean, I'm forever grateful that they did, but
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so got up and did one song with them, and then Tim came in and was like, "Oh, do you know how to play?" Started rattling off other UMI songs. Do you know how to play Kathy's Clown? And I'm like, "Oh, I think so." And then we played that one, and then like,
Yes, Mr. Rogers. Okay.
it's just yeah. Whenever I think of myself back then, I think of the kid who works in the drive-thru on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
If I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me. That's probably how I spoke then as well. But the paper or plastic, sir. Oh, yes, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Um,
Do I have to detune on this one?
so I ended up playing 3 or 4 songs with them, and it was a lot of fun, and we hung out afterwards, and they let me drink a couple of their beers, and it was really fun. And then they went away on tour. They went overseas. I think I might have gone over to the States to play with Rocket from the Crypt. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the next thing they were doing. So then I didn't, that was I kind of like I kind of put any. I've just kind of thought, well, that was that. That was a nice thing to do, and it was really nice to meet them and whatnot. And then,
And
I think
before we get to the next chapter, you go back to high school after that.
that's right.
What
Yeah.
happens? Like you must have been like Caesar conquering Rome or whatever. Coming back to high school that next Monday, right?
Oh well, it was yeah. I mean, it kind of get it certainly.
You weren't so nerdy anymore, were you?
Well, exactly. That's the thing. I was kind of a bit of a loner and a bit of a bit of a nerd, and treated as such by the jocks in the school. I went to a very sport oriented high school, so you know if you're a nerdy kid who loves the Kinks and the Who, then well, that didn't
Mm-hmm.
wash so well with the meatheads. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure I did have a little bit of extra pep in my step going back to school, telling them I've just gotten on stage with this really cool band.
I mean, okay, so you had mixed. You had boys and girls at your high school.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. So your stock went way up. I'm sure it must have.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did. And it's just like, oh, well, you can be a nerd, and you can talk to girls, and you can like
Mm-hmm.
it was I was so painfully shy, and even in my my first little my first couple of years in UMI, I was still that. Never, all the fellas in UMI had partners, and they wanted to live vicariously through. And I was like, "Go on, go and there are girls there who want to talk to you. Go and talk to them." And it's just like, "Oh no, can we just talk about Exile on Main Street?"
Because that is every school kid's dream. That was Dave Grohl's dream. He always said he went to gigs with picks in his pocket because if something happened, he could get up and that was kind of his fantasy.
Yeah, right.
So you were in high school and you were able to then do that, and then that's a dream come true. That's instant
Oh,
social steroid.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And it's, I don't, I still, like I said, I somebody asked me a similar question the other day, and it was only did like it did trigger that, and I do think about it occasionally, like how what it just seems on paper such a implausible thing to happen, but it happened,
It happened.
and so I'm fucking grateful for it, you know?
So they come back from tour, and
Yeah.
then how does that reconnect happen?
Well, yeah, they come back from tour, and then this might have been like 18 months or so later. Tim was about to put out a solo record, and called me. I can't remember how it worked. I'd finished high school and I'd done 2 days of university. I was doing a social sciences journalism thing, and 2 days in, I was just like, oh fuck, I'm really not this. This is not for me, and I'm really just doing this to make my parents happy. And the phone rang, and it was Tim, and so hey, Davey, Tim Rogers here, and I was just like, okay, like think he was one of my schoolmates. I was like, okay, like who is this Stu? Is this you, Matt? No, and he's like, no, it's Tim Rogers, and so it's like, no, no. Anyway, once we got past that, and I realized it actually was him, he yeah, he told me it's like, well, I've made this solo record and I'm about to go on tour, and would like to have, and it was a different setup to UMI. It was upright bass and fiddle and mandolin, and he's like, oh, I think he just wanted a second guitar player to kind of bounce off a little bit. We were both playing acoustic guitar, and it was more of a um folky kind of thing. And yeah, it was like rehearsals start next week, and if you're up for it, then it was just, and so I had to go back to university the next day and told them I was deferring, and they were like, "Oh, well, this is a really bad idea. You can't do this." So I'm just like, then thankfully my parents were supportive, supportive of that, because I feel like maybe that month on tour with Tim was maybe a little bit of how seeing how we get along, and because that's the person that, well, if you've got a compatible personality, it's kind of the most important thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so we did that tour together, and it was like, huge eye opener for me. Like, learned a lot in a very short space of time, and then after that tour finished, Tim and I had been talking a little bit, and then yeah, it just came up and said, well, would you like to have a crack playing with the band? And it was like, yeah, okay, gee, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Um,
I'll have to ask my parents.
yeah, I'll have to ask my mom. But so it was, yeah, I mean, it was all tentative little steps at the time, but
Mhm.
but also massive leaps of faith for them.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And that's you joined in 99?
99.
Okay. All right. And the fact that you've hung in there, that you've
I
stuck
know,
to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, something's got to be working. So,
How long how long until you didn't feel like you were the new guy?
it probably took like it was a good few years, I reckon. Like, and also as well, I'm kind of like at the time trying to learn how to be a better musician, uh and or adapt to the kind of rootlessness of being a touring musician as well, like, routine out the window, like
Mhm.
the old cliche of every night a different hotel and blah blah blah, all that kind, and kind of getting used to that, which psychologically for me took a little bit of time. But yeah, it definitely took a few years of feeling like, and I guess the the thought that I always go back to is the very first show that I played with UMI, which was in Auckland in New Zealand, and started the show nervous anyway, but I think I remember having a Fender Twin, which are fucking loud amps anyway, and having it at kind of a nice breakup point. But I think by the end, I made so many mistakes that by like every song, I'd flick my amp back a couple of notches. So I think by the end of the gig, it wasn't even on. I don't think so. Uh, but just this having this sense of being I was going to say this calm in the eye of, but I wasn't calm. I was terrified. But having this band, having this whirling dervish go on around me, and I'm kind of just observing it and just trying to keep up with it. And
Mhm.
it definitely took a few years of becoming like a more experienced musician and becoming and building my confidence up to a point where it's like, okay, well, I can't keep up with what's going on, and maybe am contributing to it as well instead of just, like just holding on for dear life.
What was the biggest lesson you learned? Something that you couldn't have learned, but only on the road early on.
Oh, that's whoa, that's a very good question. I don't know. I mean, I suppose over the years you have playing in a band, you're thrust into so many different situations, and you meet you meet people along the way, and you become friends with people. And it's funny, like over the years how many people, and some occasionally like someone comes up in a conversation that was a muso then, that was a real, like, pushing like real hard to network, and like was doing all the right things and talking to all the right people, and then like they just kind of fall off the face of the earth. And it's like, oh, do you remember that? Do you remember that guy? And so, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was a fucking dickhead. I think it was just like I mean, if anything, it was it was a lesson taught to like just never lose focus of what your motivations are for doing it in the first place. Because it's always the people, it's always those people who are in the, in the right scenes at the right time, to meeting with all the right people. And it's like, oh, I've got to go and talk to that guy because he's books this and that. And it's just like, and that's the thing, the guys in UMI have never been like that. And it's just like, yeah, I think just it kind of speaks to like keeping an ego in check as well, like it's like just
Being authentic, you
being
know?
all exactly. There you go. You
Mhm.
just never lose, like, and a lot of people that I've met along the way who have done all those right things and networked with the right people, but like it's like, well, if you spend a bit more time on your songs, and you probably mightn't need to grift that hard in the in the other areas, like so.
I've never
um,
been a musician. I've hung around in those circles and whatnot, obviously. But
yeah,
I guess my observation, there comes a time when uh, desperation can potentially set in. Like,
yeah,
holy fuck. Oh, I've now banked majority of my life on this career that could really just sway one way or the other.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not in control of this bucking bronco. But I need some sort, security starts to become important to people, especially if they start to have a family or some sort of
Yeah,
concerns, some sort of, additional requirements.
of
And,
course.
and
Yeah.
then that could lead people to be maybe stepping outside of what they in their heart would know. Oh, I got to network with this person. Oh, that'd be great if I got a collab or a co-write with this other person. They start to kind of their motivations become a little bit more obvious. And
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I think that's like if you and it's it is that does become uh more and more transparent with, I don't know, like, yeah, like, you know, seeing bands, and it happens less nowadays, I guess, maybe because I'm a bit older. I'm not like I'm just kind of in my own little bubble a bit, really, even though I try to keep my ear to the ground. But a band will come out with a new sound, or like Kings of Leon or something like that. It's just like, oh man, it got expensive stylists, and like it's that yeah. I don't
Mhm.
know. I know the point I'm trying to make. I'm not making it very well, but you know what I mean.
I think I do. And I guess the one thing that I see going on in your catalog is you seem to be doing a lot of really interesting things that I know must come from the heart. Like, for example, the fame beats, you know,
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
doing a side project like that. It's a one-off record, right? But it was
Yeah,
kind of a
that's
tribute.
right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of following your heart. You're following your muse, what you think is right at the moment. And
Yeah.
creatively, it generally is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's just like it can come across a bit dilettantish sometimes, but I love dipping my toe into into all kind of different things. And I don't know what it's like in other places. Melbourne's a bit kind of like, well, if you're in this kind of scene, then that's what you do, or like, if you play funk music, then I find I've always been that things with scenes and strict parameters around what you can do. Like, I find that really um just a bit tiring, like, and a bit unadventurous. So yeah, well, I just like following whatever is, and that's the thing. I've been lucky. Have been lucky enough to collaborate with some really great people, but the motivation for collaborating with them has never been like, oh well, like to get to further one's career. For me, it's just like to look back on collaborating with some of the people that I have. It's just like I fucking really admire these people and what they do, and I've got this cool little document of doing something cool with this artist that I really admire, and that's something I can go back to for the rest of my life. And it's not something that I've ever wanted to really use to kind of go, oh well, it's a selling point for a new record or something like that. It's just I just love doing cool things with cool people.
Well, yeah, what it feels right. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
speaking of which, the rights,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that project, how did that come together? Now, I guess how do you describe the rights to people who aren't familiar?
Well, that was just like a little one-off thing that my friend Nick, who is the singer in Jet, he became really obsessed with that Hard Road, that Stevie Wright record, which is an amazing record. Yeah, I think I just remember talking to him at the time about, it's like, oh, Stevie Wright at the time was living pretty hard, like he'd lived a pretty rough life and had hit upon some hard times. And the idea, I think, was,
And just let me set the table here because a lot of people
yeah,
internationally may not know Stevie Wright. He was the
of course,
lead singer
yeah,
of the Easy Beats. He
yeah,
was really kind of a national music hero in Australia. He had a couple
yeah,
of just banging solo records, Hard Road, what was
yeah,
it Bad Boy Bruce Buster? Was
yeah,
that
yeah,
one?
Black Eyed Bruiser, yeah,
Black Eyed Bruiser.
yeah.
But he had a really rough addiction as well. So the last
That,
couple decades of his life was really tough. So he was still around at that time, but he was
he
living
was still
rough.
around.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was on the Alberts label, so he was kind of like, like adjacent with early AC/DC and what Vander and Young were doing with with um with their artists. But yeah, so I mean, it was just an idea of Nick's to cover to do the three-part Evie song, and yeah, and that was he just kind of, and as with any of that, yeah, his motivation for that was just making some money for Stevie Wright and doing something cool with his mates, and I was, yeah, lucky enough to get the call up, and we recorded the song at Albert's with Harry Vander producing, and that was an experience in itself, and he,
W-
had some pretty.
was George still around then?
He was, yeah, George was still around. This Rights was about 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, George was still around, but I think George was living in the Netherlands. He was living in Europe or something and was working in computer programming or something. I think that's how he ended up later in life.
Okay.
But
But
no, it was
Harry Vanda was there. Okay. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. So yeah, but that was just a one-off single, but it's I've got the yeah, but it would put it out as a single and I think it went to number one, I think. Anyway, I've got a gold record in my toilet, so that's
You should really put it on the wall.
yeah. Hey.
So okay, so you guys recorded Evie, and you guys played Wave Aid, which I was there at that. This is the tsunami
Oh, that's
benefit
right.
in 2004 or something like that, and there was
Yeah, yep, yep.
a big benefit. That was that the only live show of the rights?
I think we did maybe a couple of other things, a couple of TV things. But yeah, that was the biggest. Yeah, I mean, I think actually that was the first time we played that three part song live, and that was if you were there, you remember there were quite a few people there.
Yeah,
Um,
I got really
it,
sunburned that day. Um,
yeah, that's right. It was scorching.
it
Yeah,
was,
I
yeah.
do remember that.
Our seats were just right. It couldn't have been. I might as well have been under a magnifying glass. But no, it's a great cause to raise money for the tsunami victims. But you guys did the show that day. Now, what was the response from Stevie? Did you guys have a lot of interaction? Did he? What was the back end of that?
Well, not really. Well, I mean, I definitely know that we got word back that he was extremely grateful, and I think I got a note from him that I've got so many boxes that I'm gonna have to go through, and I know I've got it there somewhere, but I'm just I'm just I'm so adverse to nostalgia that I'm sure at some point I'll get to a point in life where I go, oh, I'm going to go back through I'm sure I've got a note from him somewhere saying, oh, thank you so much, blah blah blah, blah. Love Stevie,
Nice.
and I did get to meet him a couple of times, and he was really lovely.
Now, other Australian legends. You used to play. You spent some time playing with the Saints too. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, with yeah, Chris Bailey's yeah, we did a few gigs in Melbourne in 2016, and in 2018 I spent 2 or 3 weeks with Chris making a record, which is going to be the last. So obviously there's the Saints that Ed has, and when I got the call up to play with Chris, I love that the Stranded record and prehistoric sounds, but I knew that of the history, and that there was obviously some kind of like acrimony between Chris and Ed, and um all I wanted to do for those early Saints stuff is just to try and, like, as faithfully as I could, like, just be as faithful as I could to that guitar sound, really, because that's you know
Hmm.
that doesn't get much more incendiary than that. And I do remember at the time, like, people going, "Oh, no, no Ed, no Saints," and blah blah blah. People writing to me go, "How can you be doing this?" And it's just like, well, what the fuck would you do, mate? Like, if if
Did you
Chris
really get?
Bailey
You really got blowback from that? That's
a little
yeah.
bit, but just from people, just keyboard warriors. Didn't take any of it really seriously, but Chris was really fun to work with. He was like, he could be very cutting, but he had just this really great dry sense of humor, and was a really really generous dude.
So you mentioned you recorded with them, but it hasn't been released yet? Any stuff we
It's
haven't heard
it's
yet?
so yeah, so I think this, which will be the last Saints record, is coming out at the end of the year, I believe. Um, and we actually, the label that he was signed to, I think he was at the time he was with Cleopatra, who put out they put out Todd's stuff nowadays, but part of the for some reason the part of the one of the agreements in his deal was that he present a record of new songs, which we did, and then they wanted a second like bonus disc of like re-recordings of old songs. So we went in and did, and I got sent. I hadn't heard them in years. I got them sent to me a few months ago, and I remember like we got yeah, like Chris went and bought a bottle of tequila and he was like, okay, right, we have to drink this before we start playing any of these songs. Okay, done. And we just like yeah, when we did versions of Stranded and Know Your Product, and but they're the most like it's like they sound like we'd all taken Mandrax or something. It's like they're the most demented, like so, and it's like, okay, let's imagine we're like, yeah, Mark Bolan on horse tranquilizers, and it's like, okay, cool, let's go. So we did, yeah. So I think that'll come out at some point as well. But that was that was a pretty amazing experience to record with him. And not only that, it was just that kind of, you know, the the whole thing was like, oh my God, it's Chris Bailey. And then it got, obviously you got to know him to a point where it's like, he's this really funny, erudite, charming dude. But then he starts singing and his voice was still so intact. As he starts singing, it's like, that's fucking Chris Bailey. Oh my goodness. Every, it's one
You
of those.
you strike me as someone who's like perpetually starstruck with who you're on stage with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in awe of everyone I get to play with, really. It's like,
Mhm.
like, and at the end of the day, it's like it's all and working with great songwriters, it's and getting the opportunity to get inside their songs with them is a real like yeah, it's you're always adding something to your own skill set, so it's yeah.
So there's one record I definitely want to touch on here, and that is the dual monophonic record.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right.
And that is now you can only get this on vinyl. Is that right? I've searched
That's
digitally. Okay.
I think yeah, I thought it was on streaming, but maybe it's not. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I have to dig a bit more. Now it's you, Tim Rogers, and Stu McKenzie from King Gizzard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd known Stu for we were playing in a mutual friends band for a little while together, and Stu was actually playing drums in that band, and we would King Gizzard had just kind of started at that point, and they were one of those bands that the first time I saw them, was like, oh, they got something. They, that they were still in very formative stage, but like, it's like, oh, they know what they're doing, and like, even, nerding out on music with Stu, it's just like, he knows his shit, yeah. And so the idea, I mean, I guess thinking back on it, the idea came from the whole thing of how, how 60s records, 60s stereo records were panned, and like, obviously everything's vocals are all over that side, and you have an arbitrary kind of, like there's maybe tuba and drums here, and like that very archaic thing of like of when stereo first came in, and it's just like, oh, you can put those things there and then those things there that don't particularly make sense heard on their own. So, and it's an idea that I kind of and may well have had been done before anyway, but I wanted to make so yeah, each side of each record there was a collaboration, a song with Tim on one side and a song with Stu on the other side, and I picked yeah, and I asked Stu because I knew he was always up for doing something,
Wacky.
something whack, something exploratory, and he was like, "Oh yeah, shit, that sounds great. Let's do that." And so the idea was that there's a song, basically a song that is there, can be heard in stereo, albeit a slightly chaotic listen. But if you pan it to the left, you get one completely independent version or arrangement of the song, which would be either Stu's or Tim's. And if you pan it to the right, you can hear obviously both in mono, like you can hear my own version of the song. So yeah, like I said, to hear they were made so they can be like perfectly synced up in stereo, and you can listen to them together. But it's it is slightly chaotic, but it's there so you can kind of pan between each one as you go. And it's something I'd love to do another one at some point, but.
So
Yeah.
each side of the record is a 45. So each side of the record really has three songs because there's one hard left, there's one hard
Yeah.
right, and then there's one with both of them co-joined.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how do you do that? I mean, do you use the same drum beat, the same click track?
I think that's how we did it. Yeah, I think we had a click track or a drum or yeah, or we had like one drum track that we kind of I think maybe the song that I did with Stu, I had a drum track for my version of it, and then he took it away, and I think he maybe came over to my place and added some stuff for his version, like, and his was all fucking. He's a really great sitar player, obviously. Um, so he put some sitar down and some flute and some and so we kind of yeah we adhered to a drum track, and I think maybe for Tim's one, I think we maybe had a click track that kind of anchored both versions. Um, yeah, but it's funny. Like I got the first test pressing back, and but the thing was there wasn't absolute separation between each left and right channel. There was still, if you panned it to the left, you still got maybe like up to like 20, not much, but like still like kind of 20% of bleed from the other side. And I took it back, and I was like, um,
I know you guys are trying to do me a favor here, but
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But it's just like, oh, look, you pan it to the left and right, and there's separate, and it's like they're like, oh, there's nothing you can really do about that with vinyl, and it's just like, have you listened to like a '60s record in stereo? It's
I'll play you Taxman right now if you want.
exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we got it there. We did another. I think we had to do another, maybe not, another couple of test pressings, but we got there in the end. But yeah, we pressed 300 of those. I think I've got a box with a little handful left over somewhere. But that's one that kind of flew under the radar. It's just like I hear about like some there's a few like kind of King Gizzard fans have picked up on it, but it's
Mhm.
generally kind of like kind of just went under the radar, really.
Oh well, yeah. I haven't heard it. I've only read about it, and I can't find a digital copy. So if one happens to show up on the merch table at the Chippo Hotel, I'm taking it home with me.
I
So
might be able to, yeah, I might be able to talk to a guy who might
you
be
know
able
a
to.
guy who knows a guy who knows a yeah. Very good. So look, all right, this record, Davey Lane, finally a party record. It's a beautiful vinyl copy too. It's on Cheer Squad. Did you select these colors? Like, do you have much
Yeah,
of a hand in
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I did. I went down to the pressing plant, and they were with Wally, who runs Cheer Squad, and
Which pressing
um,
plant? Did you go Zenith?
there's Zenith.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And well, you must know Wally.
Yeah.
the meetings.
I'm getting to know him. I'm going to have him on the show, but
Oh, fantastic.
yeah.
Oh, he's great. And it's his record label, Cheer Squad, that have put the record out. And yeah, like they kind of showed me. I just like the idea of the opposing label. Yeah. So yeah, we went with the red and yellow, and yeah, no, it turned out all right.
Beautiful. Absolutely striking. And the cover, again, it's a bit of a nod to Rod Stewart, maybe.
That's that's the thing. It's I mean, and obviously it's such an obvious reference, and I go, oh, like, it's just like, oh, I actually don't like that record, but that was kind of a template for the direction, and the mate of mine who did the illustration. I was like, well, this is a rough template, and he came back with it, and it was like it was pretty like it was pretty obvious homage, but it was just like, oh, well, fuck it, like I do, um.
It's really striking. It's a record that when I go to a record store, I like to bring home things that I don't know. And I just I look at the album cover and I'm kind of like, okay, this is kind of speaking to me.
Yeah, yep.
And this would be something that I would absolutely like. Yep. All right.
That's
something to be learned here.
That's well, I'm glad to hear that. And that's like what we were talking about before about wandering into a record store, and like, yeah, if there's I have had experiences like that in the past where you pick up something that, like, oh, the cover aesthetically, like, is ticks all your boxes. So that's what I try to do with my record covers. It's like the last one kind of was a bit more bleak. It kind of was almost like a prog cover or something like that. Not that there's much. It's a prog record, but yeah. But no, oh, thank you. I'm glad you dig it,
mate. Davey, thank you so much. I know we've threatened to kind of get together for quite some time now, and you've got a new record, and I want to make sure people are aware of it. Cheer Squad Records. I'll put the link in this episode page. It's on streaming services as well.
Yeah, it'll be up on streaming. Yeah, but no, thank you so much, Nate. I'm not just pissing in your pocket here. I am an avid fan of your podcast, and you've interviewed some of my heroes as well, and so it really is an honor to be to be now amongst some heady company in your in the annals of the vinyl guide. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
Speak to you soon.
Cheerio.
Bye bye.
Absolute gem of a guy. Good man, that Davey Lane. You got to go a long ways to find someone who will say a bad word about him, and they'll still be wrong. Anyway, hey, again, cheersquadrecordstapes.bandcamp.com. I believe the website is cheersquadrecords.com. You got to Google it, and maybe even bother your local record shop for one. And hey, if you're in Australia, make sure to check out Davey's upcoming tour dates from his Instagram page, Davey Hello Lane. And if you're at the Chippo Hotel next week, well, shoot me a DM and I'll let you buy me a beer. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to everyone who's leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And those of you who are sharing these episodes on social media, Reddit forums, and Facebook groups. That is hugely appreciated. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, you all behave yourselves. And thanks again for listening to the Vinyl Guide podcast. Cheers.